Hello, I'm Greg, and this is part 9 in my Unity tutorial series on the classic arcade game Defender. So if you've ever wanted to know how to write an arcade game from scratch, then grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, and follow along as I teach you how to recreate Defender in Unity. The first thing I want to do in this episode is I want to add the ability for our player projectiles to destroy the humans. The reason I want to do that is there is a tactic, a pretty popular tactic among Defender players, where they will wait for one human to be captured by an enemy lander, shoot the lander, grab the human, and carry it around as a passenger while they finish the level. And they will destroy all the other humans on the surface. And the reason they do that is because they want to make sure that no lander can make it to the top of the screen with a human prisoner and become a fast mutant. It just makes the level easier to complete if they don't have to face the fast mutants. So right now, if we were to test this, our player projectiles will not impact the humans. So we come down here and we shoot, you can see that they're just not having any effect. They'll blow up enemies, but not humans. By the way, I disabled the audio on our game view because it's a little bit annoying when recording a video and testing repeatedly. So in order to fix that, we need to do a couple of things. First, I need to fix the layer that our humans are on. By mistake, I put them, or left them rather, on the default layer. We want to move them to the humans layer, but not the children, because we want the blip to remain on the overview map, because we only want it to be visible on this map, and the main camera will ignore overview map items. The other thing we need to do is on our human is we need to add the destructible script. So let's go into our scripts, destructible, and we'll just drag that onto the human, and I'm going to set the points to 0 so we don't get awarded any points when shooting a human. I can't remember if in the original Defender if you got points for destroying humans, but actually I could probably check that. If I go into our art folder, no, you do not get points for killing a human. Okay, good. All right, so there is a problem with this. We'll go ahead and edit our physics layer because I know that our collision matrix is not currently correct. Enemy mob should interact with the player and the player projectile and humans, but we don't care about the HUD, overview map, or background. Player projectiles should interact with humans and enemy mobs, so that's good. The player, of course, does want to interact with humans and enemy mobs, so that's good. I can go ahead and turn all this off. And that's probably good for now. If we were to test this, we should see that our projectiles do in fact destroy humans on the surface of the planet. And there we go. But there's a bug. Watch if I fly into them. I don't think we should be able to destroy humans by flying into them, especially if a falling human that we want to catch. In that case, we definitely don't want to kill them. So what we can do is modify our destroy on touch script so that we can ignore certain layers. So I'm going to go into our destroy on touch script here, open that up in the editor. You see we've got an on trigger enter 2D. We grab the destructible component off of whatever it was that we hit and we destroy it. We do want to collide with humans because we want to be able to catch them if they're falling, but we don't want to blow them up. So what we can do is we can add a serialized field, and it will be a layer mask, and we'll call this layers to ignore. So we'll come into on trigger enter 2D, and what we're going to want to do is a little bit of bitwise math. I'm actually going to add a function for this. I'm going to say if should ignore this collision. I just like things to be explicitly named. We're going to pass in our collider 2D. Then we're just going to return. So I'm going to put my cursor here and hit Control period, create method, and I'm going to hit Shift delete to delete that line. So we're going to say return. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our layers to ignore, and we're going to do a bitwise and we're going to take one and shift it to the left by the value of our layer that's on the item that we collide it with. And if that value is greater than 0, then we want to ignore this layer. Okay, I have a mismatch parentheses. 1, 2, I want to add, I don't think I need this parentheses. All right, so what we're doing, we're going to take our layers to ignore, and we're going to do an and we're basically, because this is a bitwise value, every layer is essentially 1 bit value. So 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and so forth. And so depending on what layer or layers we selected for here, we want to do an and, a bitwise and. This is not a logical and, this is a bitwise and. We want to compare that value to what it was we collided, but we need to take this and shift it to the left 1. And hopefully that'll make sense. I could actually debug this, and we can put a breakpoint here so you can see the value that we're getting here, and then what that value becomes when we shift it to the left 1 position. And then how that and would work here. But basically, if we get a non-zero value for this and, bitwise and, then we know that the thing that we collided on is one of the layers that we said we want to ignore. So if that is the case, then we're just going to return, and we're not going to look for a destructible component, and we're not going to try and blow it up. So if we go back into Unity, we need to go to our prefabs that have those destroy on touch components. So in particular, we want to do our player ship. Go ahead and minimize some of this stuff here. And here we have this destroy on touch, and we're currently ignoring nothing. We want to ignore humans. And we want to do the same thing on our enemies. So we go into our mobs, lander, destroy on touch, because we don't want the landers to destroy the humans when they touch them either, because we want them to be able to pick them up, right? All right, let's go give this a quick test. So I can fly right through them, but our shots destroy them. All right. Okay, so now I want to create a new prefab for our mutant. The landers will mutate into a mutant if they carry a human prisoner to the top of the screen. So I'm going to duplicate this lander here, and I'm just going to rename it and call it mutant. And we're going to want to change its sprite. So I'm going to go down here and drop this down. Let's expand this so I can see the images. We want that one. And if we go back up to the parent element, we're going to want to change this sprite to be that one. And I will delete that. This guy should have updated already. Interesting. Let's go ahead and get out of here. I just want to see if I drag a mutant into the scene. It is correct. All right, good. The rest of the values for that should be fine for now. The mutant, like the lander, if we go in here and look at these, the scoring screen, the mutant and the lander both get 150 points if you kill them, so that's the same. We don't need to change that. I think we're good for there. Now what we want to do is we want to create a script that we're going to use when we mutate. We want to have something called a MutatableMob. Is that what we want to call it? Basically, we want to have something that will tell the system that this particular entity can mutate into something else. Go into our Defender folders, minimize that, go into our scripts folder, our mobs folder. I think I'm going to put it in the mobs folder. I'm going to right click here, say create C# script MutatableMob. I think that would be good. And this script is actually going to go on the lander. So let me go into our prefabs, mobs, lander, and I'll say add component MutatableMob. And then I'll double click that to open it up in the editor. This is going to be a very simple script. We're going to have a serialized field, which is going to be the prefab for our mutant. So we'll say mutant mob prefab. And then we're going to have a public property to give us that. Mutant mob prefab is an expression body method that just returns that member variable there. Very, very simple. I told you it was going to be simple. All right, let's jump back into Unity. And we're going to want to take a look at our wave manager. Let's open that up. Zoom in. So we've got our remaining enemies here. Let's look at our... I think I want to put a public method up near the top here and call it mutate mobs. And I want to, just to make sure things are working, do a little debug log. And I'm going to say mutating mobs, and we're going to say our game object.name. So basically mutating mobs in wave 1 or wave 2. And I'm going to do something a little interesting here. So we've got this collection of enemies. And what we're going to do is we are going to iterate until there are no more enemies left in that list that have the mutate mob component. And so what I'm going to do is, this is going to seem a little odd, but I'm going to create a while loop. I'm going to say while enemies.any. So this is a link query, basically. And I'm going to call mutate mob. And let me control period and create that function. And I'm going to want to move that down below our callback methods here, down to the bottom of the file should be good. And for now, I'm just going to return false just to satisfy the compiler. And this is an empty, basically an empty body. I don't really care. The main thing is I want to loop until this function returns false. And you see it added this system.link namespace because of any, which is basically a link query. All right, so the first thing I want to do, if I actually want to pass in mob, not arg. All right, so basically what I want to do is say if not mob try get component mutatable mob out var mutatable mob. Okay, I actually spelled this wrong here. There we go. Mutatable mob. All right, I like that. So if this mob does not have the mutatable mob component, then we're just going to return false. So that while loop that we're calling this from will continue looping until this function returns false. So now I want to put another debug.log statement, say mutating mutatable mob dot name to mutatable mob. Actually, I want this to be in curly braces. Mutatable mob dot mutant mob prefab dot name. So we're mutating it from whatever it currently is to whatever this prefab is defined as. All right, now we want to cache its position, or actually its transform. And this is just for efficiency so that we're not referencing its transform more than once. It's really not a big deal, but it's something I like to do. And now we're going to instantiate the mutatable mobs, mutant mob. I can never type that right. MutatableMob dot mutant mob prefab. And we want to do it at its position and rotation. Even though the rotation of those mobs should never change, but we'll just go ahead and do that. And then we're going to remove the original mob from the enemies list. So we'll say enemies.remove MutatableMob.gameObject. And then we're going to add the mutant and return true. So we grabbed a mob from the enemies list, we mutated it, return true. We'll keep doing that until there are no more mutatable mobs in the enemies list. And our compiler errors should all be cleared up. The next thing we want to do is call this from the MobManager. So we'll jump back into Unity again. One thing we want to do is go to our lander prefab before I forget. And we should now have, go ahead and collapse all these. On our mutable mob, we've got this mutant mob prefab. We want to drag in our mutant. Okay. And I like to put all my scripts at the bottom of a class or of a component. Come on. Okay. There's a lot of little scripts on this guy. All right. So now we want to go into our MobManager. So in onEntityDestroyed, we're basically checking to see if the entity that was killed is a human by just essentially seeing if our humans collection contains that. Oh, this is a typo. This never would have worked with that error. So basically, we want to see if our humans collection contains that entity that was destroyed. If it does, we want to remove it from our humans collection. And this is just a little debug statement to say that we're removing enemy and that there's this many enemies left. So now, what we want to do is we want to say if there are no humans left, so if humans.count is less than 1, then we want to mutate mobs. And I'm going to hit Control period, create method. And in here, I'm going to add another debug log. We'll get rid of these eventually, but right now I just want to be able to see in the console if things are working. Mutating mobs in, and this is going to be the number of waves that we're mutating them in. So right now on this level, we've got 2 waves. So I expect to see a message that says mutating mobs in 2 waves. And then the individual wave managers will have their own log saying mutating mobs in wave 1, mutating mobs in wave 2, and so forth. And we're going to iterate through our waves. And we're just going to call mutate mobs on that wave. And that should be all we need to do. So let's go back into Unity. Let everything recompile. Hit Control S to save. And I just like to save my project too, just in case anything changed in the project. And if Unity crashes, I don't lose all my work. We're going to hit play. And I am going to shoot all of the humans and see if the entities, the landers, don't mutate into mutants. Let's fly around and let's destroy all these humans. And I actually want to wait until the second wave appears. A few more seconds. There we go. I can't get them. There we go. So mutating mobs in 0 waves. So there's some kind of a bug there in our wave collection. But it did at least spit out that line, so at least that much is working. Let's take a look. So if we dive into our MobManager again, our waves is an array that's exposed as a serialized field to the editor. So I'm wondering if I just forgot to assign those. Yep. So all I got to do is drag in wave 1 and wave 2. Hit Control S to save the scene, hit play. Grab my handy dandy controller. And let's go ahead and shoot these guys. And wait for the second wave to appear. And there they go. And there's the last human. Boom! And look at that. They're all mutants. And I can shoot them or run into them just like the other landers. Cool. All right. The next thing I want to do is basically check for a level complete condition and game over condition. Like right now, I just finished that wave. I killed all the enemies, so I should at least recognize that that happened. So let's go look at our game manager and open up that script. One thing I'm going to need is a reference to our MobManager. So I'm going to come down here and add an awake method. And I'm going to say MobManager equals find object of type MobManager. And then control period to add that field. There we go. And down where our components destroy event is called, or our function is called, I think what I want to do is after I do all this, I want to say if lives is less than 1, if I can type, if lines is less than 1, then I want to call a game over function. I'll generate that function. And all I'm going to do in here for now is say debug.log game over. And then I'll just return. Then I'm going to say if MobManager remaining enemies is less than 1, remaining enemies is less than 1, then I want to call wave complete. And I will say debug.log wave complete. All right, let's jump back out into Unity. Let's first test the game over logic. I'm just going to commit suicide 3 times. And you can see down here, it says, oops, it says game over. All right, now let's try the wave complete. Let's see, I'm going to use the smart bomb. Wait for the next wave. And wave complete. Okay, so those state checks are working. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this video. If you found that useful, and I really hope you did, do me a favor and click the like and subscribe button. It really does help me to grow my channel and help with the YouTube algorithm to show my content to as many people as possible. And if you have any questions about anything I covered in this video or any suggestions about things you'd like to see, drop a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you have any more detailed questions that you really can't express in a YouTube comment, or something that would require a more detailed reply with maybe some screenshots or something, then head over to my Discord server. I'll put a link in the description, and we can have more of a in-depth conversation over there. So once again, I really appreciate you all tuning into my channel, and thanks so much for watching, and good luck on your game development journey.